absolutely ridiculous. They'll believe anything. They'll believe anything. Maybe The Great Reset. Right, that's what we're going to talk about today. We are back. We've got Neil here. He's still with us today. Thank you again for joining us.
No problem.
And yeah, we're going to be talking all about Klaus Schwab and the Great Reset and what we think about this. So, before we do that, what do we need to do, Abby?
如果你喜欢我们的影片的话，请帮我们按赞、订阅、分享。
And Neil, what is that in English?
Please hit the like button.
Sure, and
Okay,
subscribe. If you haven't yet
subscribe.
subscribed, what is wrong with you, man? You need to subscribe. Subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff, and let's get into this, right? So, Great Reset. We all
Great
know
Reset.
about this a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Neil, what do you know? Tell us about the Great Reset.
I don't really know much about it. I mean, that's it. Just like it says, the economy is going to reset. There's going to be a whole new world order. I mean, I don't know. I haven't researched it much, but that's what I know.
Sure, and it's run by Klaus Schwab, right?
Let's keep it clean.
We'll try. Yes, I mean, Abby, what do you know about the Great Reset?
I think they're trying to build a global government, so they have to destroy everything first. So it means like a great reset, so they can have a space and room to build out a new one.
Sure, because what's the slogan we keep hearing from everyone? BBB, right?
Oh yeah, build back better.
Build back better. But how do you build back if you don't fuck it up first?
Well, it's already pretty much screwed.
I'm not so sure, right? Because one of the things that they talk about with this Great Reset is like that you will own nothing and you'll be happy. Some of the videos that they've put out. So before they build it back, they need to make sure that we all own nothing, right?
Yeah, let's try to make we own nothing. We have to rent from them or rely on them.
Yeah.
As
So
someone.
I'm guessing at some point they're going to crash the everything bubble.
I don't know if you guys heard about Airbnb, but going back to the Russia situation, Airbnb was canceled in Russia.
Yeah.
They've
And Russia canceled Facebook today.
did Russia cancel Facebook or
Yeah,
did Facebook cancel?
Russia canceled Facebook.
They kind of
Yeah, it's like you cancel me, I cancel you right back.
That's a good accent.
Yeah, so it's interesting, but as we say, so yeah, they probably need to destroy some stuff. I don't want to get into the financial part, but a quick one. I think that it's got a lot to do with interest rates and inflation and debt. And yeah, possibly they crash the everything bubble. Property, stocks, crypto, all crash at the same time. And then the guys with the money, because you guys know right now, I think that there is a record amount of money being held in at the Federal Reserve by the big bankers in the reverse repo facility. I think it's like almost $2 trillion possibly.
Yeah.
And throughout history, what do? They push the bubble up. And then once it's really going, your average people like us get suckered in and we push the bubble up further. And as we're providing the momentum to push it up, the rich guys sell. And then they crash the bubble. And then at the bottom, when everybody gets margin called and they have to sell, they're forced to sell, they come back in and use that money and buy everything at a great discount.
So going back to when we first lived together in 2008, when we first met, when the Citibank, now Citibank has another problem right now, but anyway, going back to Citibank went down to $1. Back then, we were both saying to each other, we wish we had money to invest in Citibank.
Yeah.
And if we had, it would $1 for the stock.
Yeah.
I mean,
it went up to what,
we would have
40?
been rich.
Now it's like a 40.
I think
I'm
so.
not sure, is it?
But the thing is, I did buy. I bought it when it was 4.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Did you sell?
Dude, I was a genius. I sold when it went to 6.
You still earn money.
Yeah, I made 50%. I thought, hey, I'm a genius. And then it went up to 40. I was like,
Well, timing the market is very difficult.
I didn't know much then. I've learned a lot more,
Yep.
so I would have probably kept those. I bought Bank of America and Citi. Oh, and the other one, I bought Delta Airlines when it was 6.
I remember that. Did
And
you
then I
sell?
sold when it was like
6?
8. And then it went up to 60.
Oh.
It's like the worst one ever.
You live
But
and
anyway,
learn.
but I mean, let's get back to it. So this is what these guys have always done. So if you're going to think about how will we all own nothing, that's the only way I can see this happening is by a massive bubble where everything crashes and everyone's forced to sell. So we can possibly have that to look forward to in our near future. But let's get back to it. So I want to show you guys something. I don't know if you've seen this, Neil, but we'll just listen to Klaus Schwab talking quickly.
Okay.
All right, let's give it a listen.
And I have to say, when I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more, half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. I'm with the president, who is a young global leader. But what is important for me?
All right, so we penetrate the cabinet. Penetrate. I think he loves penetrating. Anyway, but if you think about it, I don't know if you could hear that well. I think the next video I'll try and increase the sound a little bit. But if you heard what he said there, he said that more than half of the Canadian Parliament has been penetrated.
Did he say the cabinet? His cabinet? Trudeau's cabinet?
Yeah, I
or
think
the
so.
Parliament?
I think it was the cabinet. I think.
So the cabinet.
Hold on, we'll just play it again. Just
All
that
right.
part. We'll see what he said.
And I had at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more, half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, so it's the cabinet.
Okay, so
right?
going back to that, I don't know if you guys know, but half of Trudeau's cabinet are mandated to be women, which cancels out the opportunity, for the best person to get the job. I'm all for women to be,
Sure.
have great jobs, but when you mandate that half of your cabinet have to be women, that doesn't that cancels out the best person to get the job, really.
Sure.
So I mean, anyway.
Well, here's a list here that I've found on a website somewhere. This is the World Economic Forum in Canada, and this is a list of 42 different people. So I don't know how true any of this is, but I heard from Klaus Schwab himself, and what did he say? He said more than half the cabinet has been penetrated. Yeah, so I don't know who is penetrating, but somebody did penetrate. Right, now I want to go back, to another video, because something happened in Parliament in Canada recently, and now that we saw that one first, let's look at the next video, and you guys can tell me what you think.
Question commentaire, questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I listened to my colleague's speech. I had a constituent that wanted me to ask a question about outside interference to our democracy. Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he bragged how his subversive WEF, World Economic Forum, has, quoted, infiltrated governments around the world. He said that his organization had penetrated more than half of Canada's cabinet. And I was wondering, in the interest of transparency, could the member please name which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda? My concern is the deputy.
Order. I know that the member was in a really good question there, but the audio is really bad and the video is really bad as well. And I apologize. I don't know if the member. Okay, let's try again.
Watch this part.
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, that member is promoting open disinformation. That's not debate. We have to call out disinformation.
We'll get into debate again. The honourable member, questions and comments. The honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm just thank you to my honourable colleague for her speech. I'd like to ask her specifically, because you talked about how this piece of legislation does not.
All right. So what did they say at the firstly, let's just go through it, right? I mean, first, he didn't want to.
He didn't really want to get into
He
it.
didn't want to get into it. He didn't want them to answer the
Try to,
question. It was a legitimate question, I
Yeah.
think,
Yep.
and they wouldn't do it. And at the end, the guy called it disinformation. I keep hearing the last 2 years of my life, it's been this new thing that I'd never had heard of before. Was misinformation, disinformation all the time, right?
Yeah. When you don't agree with something, it's easy to say that, right?
Yeah, and people just believe it.
Yeah.
But I showed you the video of that Klaus Schwab guy saying that they'd done that.
Yeah.
So if there's some context that was missing, that possibly is true. We can't say we know everything.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't they even deal with it? Why wouldn't they even answer the question and then also call it disinformation?
Like it's an easy way to avoid
Yes.
to work
I agree,
way.
Abby.
Yeah. So then, but then does it, think about the effect on people. Do people who see this now, like let's say for us, do we more believe that they have been penetrated, or do we believe that it's not true? It looks like more penetration to me.
Well, go ahead, Abby.
Yeah, I think it's like a gamble because they know there's too many informations on internet. People don't have the time to figure out everything, so they just
believe it.
They just believe it.
Well, you know, the Canadian population, they don't necessarily believe the media anymore. Because the media was bought by the Canadian government. 600 million was given to the, media in Canada by the government. So when the government owns the media, they control the narrative.
Sure, but I think it's everywhere. The
Is that right? I
trust
don't
in the
know.
media has gone down. I mean, just
Yeah,
look at
that's true.
CNN's ratings. They are in the toilet. Oh.
Good God.
And not just them. I mean, I think Joe Rogan gets way more views per episode than all of them combined.
Oh, yes. It's so true, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's the reaction, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you look at what they're doing, they're just creating more and more distrust in the public institutions. So like in that other segment that we did, we talked about how they're like destroying the trust in the banking system. I think they almost took Canada's banks down, right?
I'm not sure if they took them down, but
No, I think almost. I think it was close because the bank runs were starting. And once you have,
I didn't hear that. Okay.
Yeah, there were definitely some
Really?
bank runs. People, I mean, why wouldn't you, right? You hear the people's bank accounts being frozen. Why
Yes.
wouldn't you try and take money out?
Yes.
Yeah, and not just in Canada. I've seen now a lot of people are advising and saying they're doing this. Keep more cash at home.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
Keep some cash. Yeah, because if you think about it, like we said, cash is something that if it's in your hand, nobody could take it from you.
Yeah.
But if it's in your bank account, it doesn't seem safe anymore.
So, but what currency, right? What currency do you go with? I have multiple currencies. I have Taiwanese dollar, euro, and American. And Canadian, so I've got four.
These things are called fiat, right?
Fiat
And what does
currency.
fiat mean? It's a promise by the government. So if you believe that your government can live up to their promises, keep that one.
I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I don't think that the ones you're talking about, some of them, like I wouldn't trust the Canadian dollar. Is it the dollar? in
The
Canada?
dollar, yeah.
I wouldn't trust the Canadian dollar.
Well, you're better off trusting it now when oil prices are going up, because when oil prices go up over $100 a barrel, it presses a green light for the for Canada to export their oil to other countries because it's worth it for them. Because they have to take
so
it out of the
basically,
ground.
Canada is saying thank you to Putin.
Well, they're not, but I mean, Trudeau just came out and said that he doesn't support a war.
Sure, I mean, who really supports,
supports a
war, right?
war,
I mean,
right?
we're going to get into that in another segment,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Like as you say, I agree with you that you're saying the value of the Canadian dollar is up.
Yes, it is.
But why care about something's value if you don't think that it's safe? If you say, right, well, I can hold this, it's worth more, but I'm at risk if I have the wrong opinion of losing it. Well, then, that's kind of an arbitrage you have to make there,
Yeah.
right?
Oil really determines the price of oil really determines the value of the Canadian dollar.
Yeah, I think also you need to look at the debt of the country as well. But I think the main thing we're talking about here is just the distrust in these institutions is growing. Distrust in the media, distrust in the banking and the financial system, distrust everywhere.
And that's why we're seeing so many protests everywhere.
Sure. Right, so I mean, what do you think for that one? Is that our no idea segment?
I have no idea.
It's pretty much no idea.
No
right?
idea.
Like, there was no idea about
No
any
idea
of that,
what's
right?
gonna happen.
First the penetrated, and then we don't want to hear the question. So I don't know. We'd love to hear what you guys think, right? I mean, imagine if that happened in Taiwan. Imagine if someone had a real question for a politician, and that happened, and they wouldn't hear it. And they called it disinformation. How would you feel? I'm very curious because for me, like, I don't know how to feel about that because I kind of want to have trust in the people who are running our country, wherever your country may be. But if you feel that you can't trust your voice to be heard, what's left?
Abby, do you feel that Taiwanese trust the Taiwanese government?
I think for the parliament or I think they probably now is like a they don't really 100% trust the government even when they are doing the policy or they gonna debate on the platform. They will use some beautiful word like to cover all of it, but people can understand they are trying to cover. But I still feel like Taiwanese people have a concept is they will support the party they support before. No matter now they doing something wrong, they still support them.
Oh, so they're very loyal to the party.
Yeah. Because Taiwan have a big issue. It's like you are pro-China or just another, how to say, against China. So some party, they will try to be like a pro and against. When you support one party, whatever they do, they will try to support them, even though they know in heart like they are not talking the truth.
Yeah, I mean, people even tell me that there's certain areas which are just more that area is for that party, like certain parts of Taipei are KMT and other places are this. So it seems to be very
There's not a lot of
tribal.
dissent in Taiwan. Like people don't protest. Well, they do, but there's not a lot of uprising towards.
Sure.
Just like in.
But
Western
I can kind of
countries.
give you a bit of a theory as to why this happens, right? Like what, 30 years ago, Taiwan is under martial law?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Taiwan is a young democracy. So until you've lost something, I don't think you worry about it. I think some people believe that once you get democracy in your country, that's it, right? Oh, we got democracy now. Everything's cool from here on.
Yeah.
But once you've gone through the cycle and the people haven't held the government leaders accountable, and then the government leaders do something bad, then you learn to distrust the government. Yeah. That was the interesting thing about the mass formation psychosis. You know about that?
I don't.
That was what we did a video on it. Robert Malone was talking about it as well. I think it was more Professor Desmet from Belgium who came up with it.
I don't know.
Where they said that what's happening now is that people feel a lot of, especially with the vaccine and the virus, is that people feel a lot of free-floating anxiety and they don't know where to put it and they feel hopeless. And eventually what they do is they'll end up, someone offers them a solution and says, this is the problem and this is the answer to it. And then they almost get like tunnel vision and they're just so focused on that solution because they think that's going to make them feel better. And they get like this tunnel vision. They can't see the harms happening.
And where did they get the tunnel vision from?
Yeah. So where it came from there as well is that they showed that 30% of people are completely follow the narrative. This is kind of what happens with Nazi Germany and stuff as well. It's the theory.
Okay.
So 30% of people are completely hypnotized by the fear.
But how did they get hypnotized?
Because they feel this free-floating anxiety. They feel very anxious. They also feel like hopeless about their lives. And there were four. I forget what the other two were. Do you remember?
Yeah. I forgot, but I mean, I know it's like people feel they need someone to help them. They need some an excuse or hero.
Yeah.
So
So then the media, whoever suggests the what the problem is and what the answer is, and then in that type of situation, people will actually end up doing terrible things because if you take away the solution, which might be the vaccine, then they have to go back to feeling the fear and the uncertainty again.
So I think where I was going with this, where is it goes back to the algorithms, what people follow.
Yeah,
right?
it could come, but I mean, but in Nazi Germany, like there were no algorithms, right? So this is a thing
But they
that's,
had the,
Yeah, so but this is more, I think, a thing that was used to explain why terrible things have happened, and then they were relating it to what's happening with the virus. But the idea is that 30% of people are completely hypnotized, 40% of people in the middle are unsure, and then the other 30% they see what's really going on.
So what do you mean by hypnotized? Is sort of a brainwashing?
You kind of this mass formation. It's kind of like desperate people need something to place their anxiety on. They need a cause for their anxiety.
Yeah.
And then they also need a solution. But where I was going with this was that the 30% of people. So it came out when the guy Desmond was talking about it. They said this isn't about intelligence. It's not like the people who are brainwashed and the people who aren't are less intelligent. And the theory was that some people, when they're young, have their trust broken by the people in authority. And that affects them for the rest of their lives. I know why, for me, I never buy into a lot of these things.
It's anarchy.
It's because when I was a kid, my trust was seriously broken with authority. By the people who were supposed to take care of me, often that trust got broken. Yeah, back in South Africa. There were a few. I mean, I went to boarding school. One of my best friends stole from me.
Okay.
And it was like really, really easy to see. What he stole was 2 bottles of Eternity perfume. And he had the key to my locker.
How did he get the key?
I gave it to him. It was my best friend. And then he ended up having 2 bottles like that.
Yeah.
And I
never knew that story.
Yeah, and I told the school about it. But rugby was a big thing, and he was a big, strong guy. He played rugby, played basketball. And the school, even though the evidence was overwhelming, protected him.
Why?
Because sport is huge in South Africa.
He's like a
Okay.
star.
And he was going to help the first team, blah, blah,
Okay.
blah, blah, blah. That's my guess. I don't know if that's really true. But the evidence was overwhelming. His excuse was he bought it stolen goods from somewhere, so he was too scared to tell the school where he'd bought it from.
So how did that affect your perception?
It broke my
Trust.
belief, my trust in the authorities that they would be there for me when I needed them.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
before that, I suppose even some family issues, but it happened to me a lot as a kid. So my natural tendency is to disbelieve.
You know
the
what? I
narrative.
have another South African friend. He's half Taiwanese, half South African. And he also, I asked him about this, and he also struggles with the trust issue, because of South African issues.
Just some
Very
stuff that
similar.
happened, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't about intelligence. This is just, they talked about is how people find their emotional stability. So some people find emotional stability by following the group. And obviously those are people who've never had their trust broken. Where other people who've had their trust broken find emotional stability based on logic and what they think and what makes sense to them.
So going back to this trust issue, because I also had a conversation with my South African friend, and it's really affected his ability to trust people.
Yeah.
And I had to talk to him about this, or we had a conversation, and I blindly trust people until they break my trust, right? Because I feel, a world without trust is, it's horrible.
Sure.
So I would rather just blindly trust someone until they break my trust, and then I
Sure.
wouldn't trust them anymore.
But don't you think, like, I've thought about this a lot, like, it's a bit hard to just give somebody trust straight away. Like, especially the amount.
Yeah.
So for me, when I just meet somebody, I do give them trust, but I give them a little bit.
Okay.
And as I get to know them more, I increase the trust level. As I see that they deserve is a strange word, but as they show that they've shown me that they deserve that type of trust, I increase the amount of trust.
So just an example of that, going back to my South African friend, he'd lent me money, and he was worried in his mind. This is when we first met. He was worried that I wouldn't pay him back. Okay. And as soon as I got home, I sent the money to his account. But between that time, from leaving his house until I got home, he was like, "Oh my God!"
Freaking out, yeah.
He was freaking out, right? Yeah. And I felt so bad about that. But it goes back to trust. So
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, and then you get everyone is going to be different with that.
everyone's
right?
different with that.
So you never know who you're dealing with.
How do you feel about that, Abby,
Yeah.
with trust? Yeah.
But yeah, because before I also blindly trust people.
Yeah.
I just when I met a guy or anyways the people, I will feel oh my God, I just like feel right, so I'm gonna trust them immediately. But and then I just just gonna betray or just
betrayed, yeah.
they probably destroy my trust, and all of a sudden I took like almost 3 or 4 years to slowly back on
3 or 4 years.
just
Wow.
because between the 3 or 4 years I just couldn't believe people. I feel like everyone is trying to not really nice. They probably hide something behind that. So I
Okay.
will be more careful. And
Okay.
now I slowly try to, I couldn't just always hide in a cover. I should just go out and hang out with others.
So it sounds like what Richard was saying. You feel the same way. You just give them a little bit of trust, you know, incrementally, a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
at a time.
But I'm still learning. Because when I try, okay, I'm going to back. I'm not like slowly. I do just maybe 25% off. Like just, I give my trust quicker, but just slower than before.
But
Yeah.
again, with this one, I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you're able to really change it because
Yeah.
it's more a thing that I think that from what they said happens when you're younger, and it sets the tone for most of the rest of your life. So when you feel that fear, like people felt with the virus, your brain has its way of dealing with that. And for some people, when they feel that fear, go with the group is like the natural like response for them.
Okay.
And other people who had their trust broken, their natural response is to believe in themselves and what they think. It's not good, it's not bad, there's no judgments at all. It's not about intelligence or not intelligent at all. It's just who you are.
Yeah. I think it's I agree.
And the
It's who
trick
you are.
there is that the people who don't buy into the narrative have to keep their voices going so that they persuade the 40% in the middle.
Yeah.
Because if their voice gets silenced, the 40% go with the narrative, and that's when Holocaust and all these crazy things throughout history have happened, where
Yeah.
people look at it afterwards and they go like, what were you thinking? Why did you guys do that? I don't know. We did you should check it out. We did a whole video about this. We talked about Nazi Germany
That's true.
and where else? And also the Cultural Revolution in China. Because you see these people who were interviewed afterwards, right? And they asked them, why did you guys do this crazy stuff? And no one could explain, right? Because it was just, that's their fear response.
It's just think they follow the order.
Yeah, so... Right, anyway, I think we got a big segment coming up next, so let's get into that. But yeah, if you have any thoughts, please share them with us and like, share, and subscribe. So,
Yeah,
right, we'll be
good.
back in a minute.